Hi, good evening, UK Crime Book Club. My name is Kate Bendelow, for those of you who have not met before. I'm a serving crime scene investigator, and I'm also the author of 3 books. The first one is non-fiction, and it's a real CSI, a forensic handbook for crime writers. And my other 2 books are the first 2 books in the Socko Maya Barton crime fiction trilogy, Definitely Dead, and the second one is Shattered Bones. And the third one is currently sat on my laptop waiting to be finished. I'm going to also just hand you over to introduce you to my good friend and esteemed colleague, Mr. Graham Bartlett.
She's been very polite.
I know I am. Kill me to say that.
Hello, I'm Graham Bartlett. I am I say I'm the world's greatest has-been because I'm a former detective, former police officer from Sussex. And now I'm a crime writer and I'm a police procedural advisor to crime writers and TV writers. And like Kate, I've got 3 books, two non-fictions, which I wrote with some chap called Peter James, if you've ever heard of him. Death Comes Knocking, Police and Roy Grace's Brighton, which is the stories behind the Roy Grace novels, and Babes in the Wood, which is about a 30-year miscarriage of justice into a double child murder. And then on the 23rd of June, I have my debut novel coming out, Bad for Good, which is about policing. It's a police procedural, would you believe? But it's told from a very different angle. And it's I won't say too much more about it than that, because otherwise I'll just go on the whole time, and we don't want to do that. So that's me.
One of the things I was curious to ask, Graham, because obviously we're both in the same situation, whereas we've both written non-fiction books and now fiction books. Which has been your favourite? Which is your preferred choice, and why? I know which mine is. I was wondering which yours was.
Yeah, I'd say fiction. I'd say writing novels is. I love it. I love writing the non-fictions as well. But obviously with non-fiction, there's a lot more trudge and a lot less imagination involved. I must admit I was naive when I went into fiction, because I thought, that's great. I don't need to do any research. I can just just flow. Oh my goodness, how wrong I was. And of course, in non-fiction, because mine's narrative non-fiction and yours is kind of explaining things, isn't it? But in narrative non-fiction, the stories are all there, the characters are all there, and so I didn't have to worry about that side of it at all. Of course, with fiction, there's a huge responsibility to build, good characters. Plausible characters,
and pace and tension.
all of that, which you can obviously. I mean, narrative non-fiction, you have to pay a bit of attention to that, but it is all there for you. But I love writing. I love writing fiction. Making stuff up is brilliant.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Especially when, not so much usually about 3 o'clock in the morning, where I don't know if you go through this, but the characters suddenly wake you up with an absolutely brilliant idea, and you can't ignore it, because at one time you do ignore it, thinking, I'll definitely remember in the morning. You don't remember.
Yeah.
So you have to get up and start scribbling ideas down, and sometimes it can be quite relentless, can't they, these characters?
Oh, I know. They act, don't they? And the thing is, you're a lot younger than me, so I've got,
a lot younger. Much.
I can't remember anything from one hour to the next anyway. So when Joe Howe wakes me up in the middle of the night and says, "Oh, I think we ought to be doing this," got to listen.
Yeah, I've been working on the standalone as well, alongside the obviously the Maya Barton trilogy, and obviously until I finish the trilogy, the standalone has taken a back burner. It's just been something that's sort of sat there and is stewing away. And originally, when I first started writing it, I didn't want to use another protagonist, which was a Socko or a CSI. I thought I just want to stick down the crime route, but move away. Well, this character has invented herself, Castile, and she is so stroppy. She's very jealous of Maya, because when I'm writing Maya, she's nudging. It's like she's literally sat on the edge of the desk with her ankles crossed, sort of tapping, going, "What about me? What about me?" She's very, very demanding. And yeah, this character is sort of trickled in. Sorry?
Is it autobiographical?
How rude. But yeah, and I don't know about you, but what I love about writing as well is I never know what's going to happen. You obviously have got your general plot line, but the characters are the ones who very, very much tell you what's going to happen.
Do you know what? That is so true. And that's, again, that was something that really surprised me in writing fiction. Because, I just thought, I know what I'm going to do on this scene. And I did the John York story course last year, so I've got a bit of a better sense about acts and structures and that sort of thing. But yeah, I know where I need to go on this. And then you start writing, and it just, I don't know what it is. It just takes things take you in a different direction, or certainly, in a more focused direction. And I do take my hat off to these people that can plot every scene, every chapter on an Excel spreadsheet and do that. For me, I mean, I can't, my act structure's out the window.
Yeah, I have tried, and I do keep an Excel spreadsheet just with like a sort of timeline of chapters. But they always say you're a plotter or a pantster, aren't you? And I'm very much a pantster, and that's Swanwick Writer Summer School, where I go every year, where I've learned sort of, they cover all type of courses to do with plotting and script writing and stuff. And in fact, I will drop a link in the comments later about Swanwick if any writers out there will be interested in joining. I can't recommend it enough. But yeah, they
brilliant. It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, dragged you along for a course there. You were, you very much the young man, weren't you? And getting dragged up on stage to strip off as a copper.
What goes on in Swanwick stage?
I'm just thinking as well, it might be worth letting people know if they might be curious as to, because we've obviously been putting up with each other for quite a few years now. How long's it been? How long have we known each other?
Well, I think at least 6. Well, I think the first thing we did was a Guardian masterclass.
That's right, yeah.
I don't think I had any books to bring along.
No, I think I was just muting the real CSI around then, so it must have been 2015. So yeah. I met Erin Kelly at Swanwick. She was one of the guest tutors there one year. And through obviously my background as a CSI, it was a natural thing, I think, like yourself, Graham, to get into advising crime writers because of our love for writing as well, and then bringing our day job in to help other people. And it was Erin who put us in touch with each other, and through the first Guardian masterclass. And I actually do remember, I don't know if you remember this, you emailed me prior to the Guardian to sort of introduce yourself and to sort of see where we were going with our presentation, so there wouldn't be any overlap. And I must admit, and you might find this hard to believe, but I was quite sort of taken aback to receive this email from an ex-chief superintendent. I sort of sat up in my seat as I was reading it, thinking, I felt quite intimidated. And now look, we are where we are.
Well, thing is, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I suppose some people, and I suppose this goes to actually kind of I know you didn't do this on purpose, but it kind of goes to my book, and my protagonist in my book is a chief superintendent. And a lot of people, even in the police, because chief superintendent is quite a high rank, but there is this kind of, oh my goodness, it's one of the bosses. But I just wanted to show that actually, when I was in the police, and hopefully still now, very human, vulnerable to the same kind of pressures, maybe different types of pressures, but the same sort of density of pressures that the operational officers are involved in, hugely conflicted roles, and actually that humanity that sits below the rank. Because I find when I read crime fiction, and obviously like everyone on this, in the UK Crime Book Club, read a lot of it and watch a lot of crime drama, senior ranks are kind of portrayed as being the kind of egotistical, career hungry, flippant idiots, to be honest. And I probably count on the fingers of one hand in 30 years those that fitted that kind of. Absolutely. Most of it, vast majority of us came up through the ranks anyway. But so it's interesting you say, because I don't see myself as a chief superintendent. My son's in the police now, and he had some colleagues came around to see him. I think he was on arrest day or something. Some colleagues came around to see him at home. And one of them recognised me from when I was in the police. Bear in mind, I left 9 years ago. Started calling me sir in my own lounge.
You do become institutionalised, though, don't you? And it is quite hard to shake that off. It's like, you never really lose. I imagine you haven't. You don't lose that police terminology, do you? That, like, if somebody says something and you reply with yes, and you talk the way you would on the police radio and stuff. I can't imagine that ever leaving. For me, I've been 20 years. So I assume, were you 30 years in?
Yeah, 30 years.
So yeah, I just can't ever imagine not having that mentality, and things like, as well, they say when you walk in a restaurant or a bar, we always have to face the door so you can see what's going on, who's coming, who's going. And I can never imagine not having that mentality. We are very institutionalized.
And I think it's the same with anyone that's been in any job for a long period of time. You kind of wear the clothes of that job, really, don't you? I'm sure the medical profession are the same. I'm sure politicians, accountants, all those people that kind of go into long careers.
Oh, we seem to have lost Graham, I think. I think hi, Kaz. Have we lost him?
We have. Hopefully he'll pop back in.
He should pop back in. And while we're waiting, I've just noticed we've had a couple of questions bob in on the chat. So while we're waiting, I'll just have a whiz through them and see if we can answer any. Just hello to everyone who says hello. And thank you to whoever said your first book was great. Thank you. Be back.
Is anyone out there?
Sorry about that. We don't know what happened. From my screen, I saw that Graham had left, so I kept waffling on inanely, trying to keep things ticking over. And then Graham said he could see me, but I couldn't hear him. And I promise I wasn't ignoring you, which I would normally do.
No. I was waiting for you to be rude. So,
what were we discussing before we were so rudely thrown out of the internet?
I can't remember. What were we talking about?
We were discussing how our jobs become institutionalized, and somebody had put in the chat box that it was similar for teachers about using the teacher voice, which really makes me laugh.
Yeah. I know a few teachers that do that.
Yeah, it's like when you use your mum voice or your dad voice as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I read something once, which my mum voice is so loud that even my neighbours shut up, take the shoes off, and go and brush their teeth. Hi again, Sam can see us, so all is well with the world.
I hope so. Yeah. Cool.
Should we chat a little bit about our crime advising? Because obviously that's something we obviously say we met through our mutually friend Erin Kelly, and we've got into that. And you've been, obviously, your website is set up specifically with people from all various walks of life to experience, sort of help crime writers. Should we chat a little bit about that and the work you do with the PWA?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I mean, Kate and I kind of advise crime writers. I've set up a kind of fairly it's a bit of a one-stop shop service, really. policeadvisor.co.uk, where on that website you'll see I think probably about 20 people, all with different expertise. For people like Kate, who've got expertise in crime scene examination, crime scene analysis, that sort of thing. We've got people skilled in counter-terrorism, undercover officers on there. We've got people from the prison service, from paramedics, just really right across the board. And it's interesting because it's really taken. I'm starting to get emails through for specific people. So Neil White, for example, is a solicitor, and I had an email the other day from a TV company. Dear Neil, please can you review this script? And it works really well. And we kind of we work either kind of one-to-one with people, so we can either talk to people about their emerging storylines, their emerging characters. I can deal with questions and answers on the topics, or one of the experts can. We do manuscript reviews as well, and it's we deal with we work with people from debut novelists, people that are doing maybe creative writing courses, right the way through to sort of household names really in the field, and it's just the kind of the USP really. I think you'll agree with this, Kate, is that we're crime writers as well as people with expertise. So you can go anywhere and go stop any police officer on the street, or and they go, how does this work? And they'll tell you. But what we do is we work with your story and your characters, and we because we know the procedure, we know the world so well because we worked in it for a long time, not because we're special, but just because we worked in it for a long time. We can kind of mould the reality into what you need for your fiction, so it's authentic, it's plausible, it's credible, But
we can help add drama to that procedural, which the procedure is so. It can be dry, can't it? It can be very heavy, very dry. And it's like for me, if I were to, the first chapter of Definitely Dead did do this actually. Sorry, the first draft of Definitely Dead. For every crime scene Maya worked in, I was describing verbatim, and it is dull. Nobody wants to learn how somebody takes a fibre tape lift or fingerprint something. But so it like you say, the benefit with us being writers ourselves is we can help put the dramatic in what otherwise would be
absolutely
very dry.
I mean, quite often people say to me, "Oh, if a 4-year-old girl goes missing, what do the police do?" And my first question is, "What do you want to happen? Where's this storyline going?" Because if you want the police to find her very quickly, then I can tell you this: if you want there to be a delay and something to happen, then we can put all sorts of things in the police's way to stop them responding in the way that they should. So it's all about working with that story and working with the what the author wants in a way that hopefully gives the confidence that they're going to be.
Absolutely, yeah. You can always manipulate things around, but I don't know about you. It's something I'm so passionate about. I think it's such a privilege. We're in such a privileged situation where, because of the job we've done for years that we absolutely love, and now the writing that we love, we can combine all of that. And I could talk about it for hours, and I love working with writers and helping advise writers. But like you say, you've got a brilliant point there. It's a very much a case of speaking to a writer and saying, what do you want to happen? I recently had an email query about a search dog. How long would it be before a search dog would lose the trail of somebody because they didn't want the person to be found by a dog? And stuff like that's easily done. Just either reality is your search dog is on its refs, its lunch break, because let's face it, we get work like dogs, but the dogs literally do get treated as they should. They have the allotted time when they're working. After jobs, they have breaks. If it's the meal break, then they won't be dragged out anywhere for anything or anybody. And and this, like my point with that was somebody asking about how quickly would the trail go cold. If you don't want them to be found, then put the police dog in a highly congested area where there's lots of people about, and they'll soon lose a trail, especially if there is other dogs about as well, or even as well trained as those police dogs are. I've worked on many a job when they've been distracted by half and eaten McDonald's. It's human nature, and we've all been there, haven't we, Graham? Come on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, that is exactly it. And there's. I remember one author contacting me and saying, I don't want the police to get to this murder scene for 3/4 of an hour. And I said, that's an easier question to answer than I want them to be there in 2 minutes, because that's never going to happen. So
absolutely,
I could put it, I'll make it 3 hours for you if you want.
Yeah.
But it's just those, knowing things like the discarded McDonald's and things like that, knowing things that have actually happened and being able to just give those to the authors so that they can
experienced those quirks.
Yeah.
Like you say about a murder scene, I remember, a good few years ago, it would have been 2010 when the riots were going on, when Manchester riots, there was riots going on up and down the country. Yeah. And we had a murder scene where the scene was secured, but I remember we physically did not get into that job to start working on it until the following day because we had no staff. We literally had no staff. And that does happen now and then. As you know yourself, it's feast or famine, the job, isn't it?
100%, yeah.
You can be scratching around some days, and very, very rarely, and you have the opportunity to catch up on stuff. And, I just appreciate that it's actually nice to be, nobody says the Q word, but appreciate the fact it's nice and not rushed. And then other days when there literally are not enough hours in the day, and we're having to sort of like ring people who've been burgled and say, I'm sorry, but on this occasion, we're not going to come. Or if we do come, it's probably in reality not going to be 3 days. So, yeah, it is quite mad. And I know a lot of the public sort of criticise the police because they say, your go-to excuses because of lack of resources. But it's true. It is a fact. To the point where I think it's quite frightening now. I think if the public did realise how few resources there were, I think they'd be like us, and they probably wouldn't sleep very well at night. But we are keeping the wheel on, and obviously we'll always continue to do so. And then obviously people like your son who are now in and seeing things how they are, it's that commitment to the job. They do say, don't they, it's a job like no other, and I think it's quite true.
Yeah, but all these things are great for crime fiction, because you don't want, I mean, I remember getting called out for a murder when I was a DI, I think, and the call was, there's been a man, he's been strangled, he's dead. The informant is the offender, and he's admitted it on the phone. Well, that's not a very good crime novel, is it? Because where's the case in that?
Where's the whodunit? Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't want any of that. So what was equally, you don't want police officers, police car around the corner when it happens and catch the bad guy running away. Well, certainly in rural areas, you're lucky if you've got a police car within sort of 10 miles, really, and even then they're probably coming from something else, or they're not authorised to drive on blue lights and sirens, and so there's
Absolutely.
sort of planners in works that you can use to make really, basically to kind of enable a 96,100,000 word story.
Yeah, exactly, in a nutshell. But I know it's one of the things as well that I've sort of not gone too much, but I have used in my own writing and the Socko Maya Barton books. I've used the opportunity to show incidences where, for whatever reason, cops are stretched or things don't happen. And I know certainly your book is very much like that. Your book is quite politically heavy around that policing, and which I think is a brilliant thing, because it's a great way of raising public awareness and letting people know what it's really like on our side of the scene tape, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, again, my bad for good. The whole world is what happens when police resources are cut so badly that state-sponsored vigilantism takes over as the crime control of choice, and the kind of body count that follows from there, and that is all around. I mean, the idea came to me when I was out of the police, and I was thinking, I was just watching the resources and just watching the cuts and everything. I was thinking, this is going to get really dangerous. I mean, it was pretty dangerous when I talk about dangerous, I mean dangerous in terms of the numbers, pretty dangerous when I was still in the police, but this is getting critical now. And then what happens if, it goes a stage further and vigilantes take over and the public start wanting the vigilantes rather than the police because they're more reliable, more effective, and, who cares whether the criminals are being swagged off the street and where they're going and never seen again and all of that. And that's the kind of world I've created with it. Yeah. So it's almost asking that question.
Yeah.
So, political with a small p.
Well, it's a brilliant book anyway. Certainly from the draft you gave me the pleasure of reading was so. I'm sure it's going to fly. And I do love that. Give us another flash of the cover, because I do like the cover.
You see me? I was sat on 1,500 of those.
Yes.
I was 1,500 over the last 2 days, and I don't like heights, but it's quite high, 1,500 books.
Oh, he's going to start bleating on now as well about how he's got writer's cramp because he's had to sign a few editions. It's a hard life being an author.
3 Sharpies, that was 3 Sharpies.
Really?
Pink Sharpies as well. I use pink Sharpies to go with the book.
I do wonder if there is something psychologically lacking within us, because if you think the 2 careers we've chosen to follow are 2 quite stressful careers, aren't they? Obviously the policing, but as much as we both love writing, it can, certainly when you're up against deadlines and stuff, it can be quite daunting, can't it? And those days when you sit at your desk to write and your invisible friends don't come out to play and they sort of leave you hanging. Have you had many moments like that? Because I know I certainly have. I mean, I had one this week. I was just like, I had this, what am I doing? This kind of, imposter syndrome. What am I doing? Oh, yeah.
I've written, the second book's in with the publishers, so that's the one I'm contracted to do. And I'm writing the third one, which I'm not contracted on yet. And I was just thinking, do you know what? I'll just leave it at 2 because I can't write this. I was going to say a naughty word then, but I can't.
Of course you can. Of course you can. Believe, but imposter syndrome is awful. It is.
I know.
It's.
And I think because of our jobs, our old jobs as well, you kind of, because of the environment you're in, you're always getting sort of some kind of, informal feedback, even if it's just somebody looking at you like.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But you at least you're getting some,
vibes. You know where you stand, don't you?
Exactly. When you're writing, no one sees my work until it's finished, and you just think this is completely, you've got to have so much faith in yourself. And it's interesting though, because I don't know any author that doesn't go through that.
No.
And it's, even the ones that kind of, could frankly, publish the phone book and it would be a bestseller. They all
yeah, absolutely. One thing I found, because obviously I'm working part-time, so when I'm not in my real life job, I'm there my writing days and rest days and what have you, my writing days as well. And I get really frustrated on days when it's not flowing, because I think for me it's very time precious, and if it's not flowing, I'm waiting a day. And that's one of the reasons why I started working on the standalone. So what I found, I don't know if this would help you if you're having a sort of a dry creative day, if you will, but usually rather than focusing on what Maya's doing, if she's not talking to me that day, I'll find out that Bossy Boots Castile, who always wants attention, I'll go and chip away a little bit of that book. And I've found that actually works quite well, just having that other outlet. Or even because I started writing, I've always wanted to write, but I started writing, as you know, doing poetry and doing performance poetry. Sometimes I'll even just break off and scribble down a poem, just because you're still keeping that creative outlet going and physically still spending time at the writing desk, which I think is important to keep that writing routine established, but then just do something a bit different. And I usually find after a while things start ticking over again. And I've got another rude poem out the back of it. So
Kate is known on the Manchester circuit as potty mouth poet. So, but no, people say that, don't they? They say you should write anyway. Anyway, and I, I kind of struggle with that. That's really good. That's really good advice, actually, because I struggle with that, because I just think, if I just think this is a load of, and I'm just kind of writing myself into a hole in my head.
Yeah.
And sometimes I can write out of it, but if I'm just kind of okay, well, I'm just going to get into the flow of writing something else. That's really good.
For me, it keeps me in the writing chair, and it just keeps that momentum going just somewhere else. And other than that, I'll just think, well, it's my writing time. I'm in my writing chair. They don't know. Barry and the girls don't know that I'm actually playing solitaire. That's my secret, because that is my go-to. What's your go-to procrastination tool? Because I'm afraid mine is solitaire.
Oh, is it? Oh no, mine is social media. I just like.
Oh really? No, you see, I don't like spending a lot of time on social media. It grates me.
It just happens. I like research. I think, I need to research, this place, or I need to research, what happens there, and then I switch over to my web browser, and I don't know. I just find myself on Facebook or.
5 hours later on Twitter.
I can't remember what I was supposed to be researching. So no, I'm terrible.
I get lost as well in plot rabbit holes if I'm researching something, especially if it's an area that I then find interesting, and I'll be researching something and then think, and then you'll find a link to something else that you were originally looking at, and the next thing I will have spent 4 hours. I probably have found the answer to my question that I needed after about 2 minutes, but then because I start reading other interesting articles, and 4 hours later when I've only written 3 words. And all that research as well usually invariably only ends up being about a line of your book as well, doesn't it? Oh, somebody just put, best rabbit holes you've both lost yourselves in. For me, it's anything that goes down the forensic anthropology or archaeology route, because that fascinates me. If I could have my time again, I think I would probably go down the forensic anthropologist route.
Oh, really?
Yeah, forensic anthropology or archaeology. Yeah, I had one job many years ago with a skeleton. Have you ever had any skeleton jobs?
No,
not
anything. No.
Absolutely fascinating. It was brilliant. Really, really brilliant. So this guy he was a known criminal to us, and he was wanted on warrant, and we just assumed he'd fled the area because he knew the cops were after him. And what later transpired had happened. He'd gone off to the local woods with some heroin, shot up, overdosed, died in the woods. He took himself quite far out the way because obviously he was wanted. So he was in quite a bit of this woodland. It was impossible to find. And as always, it was the dog walker. The council had been and cut some of the shrubs back, and a dog had been able to access the area where his body had been laid and came back with part of a hand. But he was skeletonized, and it was absolutely fascinating. But we talk about this as an example of gallows humor, because as we know, we can't do our job without gallows humor. I remember we had the forensic anthropologists and archaeologists working with us to make sure that we'd recovered all the bones, because obviously he'd been out in the woodlands, so he'd been scattered by wildlife, which I think the technical term for that is topophony, but don't quote me on whether that's pronounced right.
I hope it's right, because I have quoted you on that before to somebody.
Yeah, and I know how to spell it, but I'm not sure of the actual pronunciation. Anyway, my boss and I decided the best way, how can we sort of preserve all these skeletal remains, to get him transferred to the mortuary, because obviously normally with the body you'd use a body bag, but when you've got lots of bones rattling around, it's not ideal. So we decided we'll go to B&Q and we'll get some storage boxes which will be suitable, so we can get a few various size, so we can keep sort of like hands and smaller bones, finger bones in one, and this, that and the other. And I remember, it was years ago, but I remember it like yesterday, walking around B&Q with my boss and him pulling these boxes over his head to go, will this be big enough for the skull? No, it's rattling around too much in here. This one's too tight, it'll cause damage to this. Yeah, and just walk. And what they must have thought of us if they were watching us on CCTV.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's absolutely brilliant. But yeah,
it's in a bigger size.
This one's too big. It was like Goldilocks. This one's too big. This one's too small. Oh, this one's just right.
Well, my best rabbit hole is, which is going to seem really odd, Napoleonic forts.
Oh,
Napoleon, because in my book there is a Napoleonic fort in there, which is used for a very, very naughty reason. I can't say any more than that. And there's loads of Napoleonic forts along the south coast, and they're fascinating. And I've been to a few of them just to have a look around, and it's just. And I just thought, I'd never thought I would get myself so into Napoleonic forts. But as you know, at the end of the day, the one that I use is one that I visited a few times and knew enough about anyway. But it was interesting. But I find I don't know, what you find in terms of sort of detail in the research, but when my first draft. When it went to my then agent, she came back and she was absolutely right. She said, "You need to cut the characters by 50%. You've got too many characters in there." And I was thinking, well, you can't, because if you have a murder investigation, you have a senior investigating officer, you have a deputy senior investigating officer, you have an officer manager, you have an intelligence manager, you have a family liaison officer, you have a covert manager, you have And she said, yeah, but the readers don't need to know all that, and they can't keep it in their heads. And I had to merge roles and have people doing things. So at the beginning, because I am, a police procedural advisor, I've got my get out of jail free paragraph. We go, look, this is a work of fiction, and when the procedure's open, it's for dramatic effect and all that.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to so many. Police officers and ex-police officers and people that worked in the police that say the same thing. The temptation is to put too much in there and to kind of, because it's so natural, rather than do what we tell everybody else to do, which is research and then use the tip of the iceberg of that to authenticise your story, and the story of the character must come first, but into the trap.
Maya Book 1, like I say, the first draft of Maya Book 1, I think was so info heavy. I wouldn't have put even all of that in the real CSI if I'd had to rewrite that again. And then it's when you're sort of harsh with yourself and realise you have to cut it back. Isn't it awful when you see a word count falling? And you have to wrestle with yourself. It's like they say, you have to kill your darlings, and it's very much. But I've done similar, because I've been mindful of the fact myself that you have to make sure you've not got too many characters going on. So, for example, I think in book 2, one of my main DCs, she doubles up as a family liaison officer for MIT because she's FLO trained. So it's just, there's always ways round it, isn't there? But just sometimes getting that sort of solution takes longer than others.
For me, that helps me with the advising, because now, because I do it, I think, well, now I'm advising on it. I need to be careful that I'm not inadvertently telling people to put loads of procedure in, or loads of people in, or explain what it feels like to sit on the phone waiting for the prosecution service to answer it, and then you actually had to do it myself and got it wrong. I think that makes the advising richer and more writer centric.
Definitely. It is with time. It does become easier that you can condense 20 to 30 or 30 years experience into sort of one paragraph of a nod to procedure and sort of skirt around the edges. I've just noticed Sam's put a comment in saying, can you tell us anything about the standalone? And Graham, do you plan to write a standalone at some point? So it might be worth us covering where we are up to next with our book. So did you say book 3 you're working on but isn't currently contracted?
So book 3 is, I've got a contract for 2 books. So first one is coming out, second one is delivered. Well, it's back with me now with some edits. The third one I'm not contracted to, but I'm writing it anyway, in the hope that I will be. And I've got the sense of the themes for book 4.
So you're sticking with the series then?
I at the moment, I don't know. I need, if I am contracted to write the third one, I need to speak to my editor, my agent about it. But at the moment, yes. But I'm starting to kind of germinate another. Well, I was going to say another series, but it's it's a good point for you about standalone and about would I write a standalone? But I'm not going to say what it is, but I've got an idea about one. And I'm thinking, does that need to be a series? Could it be a standalone?
Yeah.
And my current series, it's all based around, it's basically it's police procedure, but within what's the best way to describe it? Probably sort of with big sort of social political issues. So the first one is about police cuts and vigilantism. The second one is about human trafficking, modern slavery, and right-wing extremism.
Fantastic.
So the way that you could run out of issues in the end. I could try writing one about Partygate or something like that. I think people would be fed up. So I think there might be a shelf life to it, but I don't know. But I think that point about maybe almost having a kind of circuit breaker as a standalone might be.
Yeah, for me, Maya was always going to be a trilogy because a lot of what makes Maya the trilogy is her backstory. And I sort of knew, even though I wasn't sure where the plot lines were going with the 3 Maya books totally, I knew how it was going to completely pan out with her backstory. I did think when I first started writing, and I just realised we've both done the same thing. We've obviously both jumped in with series. I have been quoted as saying I am never going to write another effing series ever again, because some parts of it I do find quite hard, because you obviously create characters who run concurrently through your books, but then something might happen and you think, I wish I'd not made them like that. I wish they'd not had this quirk or this trait. I don't know if you found that, but I found that quite trying. My standalone is a bit. I'm worried it's going to be very much Marmite, because the protagonist in my standalone is actually the victim, is actually a murder victim.
Right.
And basically the strap line is, what's worse than waking up one morning to realise you're dead? And that's realising you've been murdered. So we hear from the protagonist's perspective, as in she has this sentient thought still going on, and she can sort of see her dead body lying in the hallway. And then Castile then comes along as a CSI to investigate her. And then the plot line takes the 2 viewpoints from Castile's side of the investigation to then what you hear from the protagonist, that she leaks out clues as to who's done it. And then it's very much a thing of who will get there first. Will Castile and her team track down the killer before our victim suddenly has a eureka moment and realise who's done it? So it's a bit.
That sounds so clever.
I'm just worried it's a bit. It's not going to be supernatural, far from it, because that's not the sort of thing. But I'm worried people might think that is what it is. We'll see. Anyway, I'll write it and we'll see.
Yeah,
it'll either be good or it won't. But it's good fun to write. So that's all I can think. And in fact, on that question, I've got a good one for you. How do you cope with negative reviews? Do you read reviews first of all?
I say I don't cope very well with. I've got to say this so that it's right. So I don't mind constructive negative feedback.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that's
absolutely, yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
What I don't do, what I don't like, and I won't read, are the kind of the trashy, you know, this is just rubbish. I mean, I've read books I really haven't liked that have been multi-award.
Absolutely, but you wouldn't then slate some. Yeah. You have respect for the fact it's taken somebody's blood, sweat, and tears to produce that work, and it could be that it might just be it's not for you, and that's fine. But I'm with you on that one. Constructive criticism's fine. I'd listen to that all day.
You know, I've had a lot of developmental feedback over my writing career, and every bit I've taken in. And absorbed and you know, taking the spirit of this is to make me a better writer or make my book a better book. But I don't read the Amazon review, good or bad.
I think my favourite Amazon 1-star review was, if I knew it had been written like this, I would never have read it.
Oh, right.
What does that even mean?
I have one. So the title of that book, first book, That comes knocking, policing Roy Grace's Brighton. Somebody gave it a 1-star review because there was too much mention of Roy Grace in it. Well, it's on it's on the ordinary cover, you know. When that book came out, it was about 10 days before I went to my first Harrogate Festival, and I was on the train up there, and I was like flicking on my phone. And I started reading reviews, and there was that review was on there, and there was another one saying, "Oh, this bloke just can't write," and that was it. 1 star, you know.
Wow.
And I just got
harsh.
The doldrums, and then in that review, Martina Cole was on a panel, and I was listening to Martina Cole, and somebody asked her about reviews, and she said, you know, the only reviews that I'm interested in are those from my editor. And my agent. All the other reviews aren't for me because I can't do anything about it. So she never reads reviews. I thought, well, it was good enough for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I do recall the time we went to Harrogate when we were doing our course on the Thursday.
Yeah.
I remember being utterly starstruck. If you remember, they invited us for dinner on the Wednesday evening, and we were in the grand company of Al McDermid, Mark Billingham, Mick Heron, Steve Mosby, and being absolutely. I remember I got to Harrogate and I got really excited because I parked my rusty old Honda next to Val McDermid's reserve parking space, and that sort of blew me away enough, the fact that I'm parked next to one of my idols' parking spaces. But then I think we have been so lucky, haven't we, so far in our career? I mean, certainly you've had some fantastic adventures with obviously your connection with Peter, but the man himself, Sir Trevor MacDonald.
Yeah.
that must have been a real pinch yourself moment.
I mean, that was a documentary on Babes in the Wood book. And he presented it. He's such a lovely man. He's so down to earth. He's like, you know, this documentary was like, I don't know if anyone sort of made.
Saw it, yeah.
I don't know if you've been on a TV set, and it's just another shot there, and well, can we redo that again? And we were kind of, you know, because I did some scenes, and you know, other people did some scenes. We were going with it. Trevor MacDonald turned up. We go, no, you've had that. You know, I've done that one. I'm not doing it anymore. It's brilliant.
Oh, that's what I mean. What a privilege to be able to work with a legend like that. Honestly, we do need to manipulate something. I'm not hogging the moment. It's just come to my mind. We do need to manipulate the moment at some point where I get engaged with having to work alongside Idris Elba.
Yes.
So I'll leave that with you. So when your book gets turned into a TV series, which you will need my CSI advice on, and and Idris gets a job.
Yeah. If he cuts the mustard at audition, then
I had to mention what you referred to the other day on Twitter as my unhealthy obsession with Idris Elba.
So for people that don't know, Kate has always had this obsession with Idris Elba, aka Luther, and she openly says to just about every live and virtual class that we do that we talk about how you have to dress when you go into a crime scene, with all of the kind of the hoods and the masks and everything,
the paper suits, and the overshoes.
I'm going to try and say this in a week before the watershed or after. So Kate basically says that Idris Elba could do anything he likes to her, but he's not coming in her crime scene without one of those suits on. So that's
See, a girl's got to have standards, Graham. Come on. Professional to the end.
We should say, because we should have a little bit of a plug, that Kate and I do run courses with the Professional Writing Academy, and this Tuesday at lunchtime, 12 to 1:30, or dinner time if you're north of Watford Gap, there is a standalone, a 1.5 hour free taster session stroke open day where we talk about the courses. And then we've got a 4-week solving a murder course where you start with a murder and then you spend 4 weeks developing the story around that with input from us, both live and recorded. You get input from Peter James, Ellie Griffiths, Mark Billingham, Julia Crouch, and then you, at the end of the first 3 weeks, you've kind of built a whole story around a single murder scene. So it's all down to you really about how you develop that, but we'll tell you what information you'll get at certain times, and then then you write it and we critique it, and that starts on the 6th of June, 4th of June, whatever's the Monday. And there's early bird pricing until Friday next week. So, but if you want to come along if you go on my website or Facebook page, you'll see the event there. If you want to come along to the 1.5 hour session on Tuesday, it'd be great to see you talking more about it.
We've got a concern for welfare, Graham. This is really sweet. Jonathan Peace has just shoved a message in saying, sorry, he can't watch, but saving to watch in the morning. So good morning, Jonathan. My question, how badly does Graham's hand hurt after signing all those books? Huge congrats, can't wait to read. Oh, don't give him any sympathy. He'll be milking it for... Julie's probably going to want him to get out in the garden this weekend, and he'll be like, oh no, sorry, I can't mow the lawn, love. My hand's still sore.
It's all right, actually. I was surprised. I thought it would be awful, but because I never write anything. I never handwrite anything at all.
You have stuff for that, darling.
But no, it was all right. Whether we can guarantee that my signature was the same on every book. I mean, I wrote every signature, but I just thought, well, that's a bit different from the one I did before. But you got to go in that. But I mean, and for really successful authors, 1,500 is nothing. They go and do 3,000 books and things like that. I just think, I'm not sure I want to be that successful.
No, it's funny you should say that. My confession for the day is similarly when I'm working on a big job and a big crime scene and we're covering loads and loads of exhibits, I sometimes do worry myself about whether I'm going to get picked up on continuity, because when you get to the stage when you're sort of 16 hours in and you scroll a signature and you think that doesn't really look like, but you just think I can't be bothered, you just sort of you feel like you're writing like that because you've had enough and just want to go home. So yeah, I do feel your pain to that extent, but you Katie's brave little soldier, well done.
Because these are like special edition books, they have to number them, and initially they said, oh, you sign them and number them. Well, I once got kicked off a major mortgage fraud inquiry. I was the exhibits officer, and it's before the days of kind of digital systems. I got kicked off the inquiry because we had so many duplicate exhibit numbers and exhibits, and they were coming into me, and I was like, finishing a book on 40 and then starting the next book on 30, and the two kind of have, and in the end they said, look, this isn't for you, is it? I said, I don't think it is. I'll go back and investigate burglaries. And it's not because I can't count, it's just because I think I'm a bit lazy and I've got the concentration span of a goldfish. I just don't do that sort of thing. In the end, they said that they'll number them because I think I scared them.
See, like you say, you've got stuff for that, haven't you? This has gone to your head. You've not been yourself since you met Sir Trevor, I swear. You've illusions of grandeur.
So what else have we got here? Is there such thing as a perfect crime? Yeah, I think the perfect crime is the one that I'm investigating in case the Socko one.
Yeah.
We get away with that. Now, what is the perfect crime? What do you think the perfect crime is, Kate?
I suppose it depends on whose viewpoint. Obviously, if you're looking at it from your offender, your perfect crime is one that you're obviously going to get away from. But it literally is very, very difficult to get away with murder, especially these days with cameras everywhere and obviously bodies are, are cumbersome very tricky to get rid of.
Yeah.
Not easy to chuck around or chop up, and getting rid of blood is notoriously difficult. So I think you if you were to say what is there such thing as a perfect crime, I'd say for me probably, and you mentioned before about your case, fraud, maybe. I think for anybody who watched the man, his wife, the thief, and obviously that's not the title, but you know what I mean, the canoe. I mean that had he not been as arrogant and conceited and probably put a bit more work into it, he probably would have got away with it to a certain extent. But I think he was tripped up by his own conceit and arrogance, wasn't he?
I think he was, and now there's a really good example of fact being stranger than fiction. Because if you wrote that in a novel,
an editor would not, they'd throw that out.
Nonsense. How can you do that? But it happened, and so he just started believing in himself too much, didn't he? So I think that's it. But I think it's so difficult. This case, it's so difficult, with digital footprints and forensics and everything. It's so difficult to get away with murder, particularly because
it's messy.
It's messy, and police do tend to kind of throw everything at them in terms of investigation. But
even arsons, even if you're going to sort of use a fire to get rid of body or clues and stuff, there's still so much evidence that can be gleaned from, and it's one of my favorite crime scenes to work on is an arson, because when you first arrive at this blackened shell and you think we're going to find absolutely nothing here, but when you actually start digging in and excavating and working along with the fire investigators, it's brilliant, and it never fails to amaze me how much you can actually, evidence-wise, how much you can pull out of there.
Very clever.
And I also like the way the little arson dogs come in, but they have the little rubber boots on to protect the feet.
They do. Cuties. Who reads books first? Somebody's written on there. Shall I tell you who reads my books first? My books, Samantha Brownlee. She is brilliant. She's got such a good take on story, continuity, drama. So Samantha reads them. I'm very fortunate because Peter James reads them. And my son Declan, who's got an unhealthy obsession with continuity as well. And whether or not I've used the capital letters for a particular term in page 12 and then lowercase in page 322, and he'll tell me that. Between the three of them, I get real confidence that both the story and the writing is kind of tight. So what about you?
You're always my go-to because I respect your view as a fellow writer, reader, and because you can double check my police procedures. My best friend, who was also my crime scene manager, Lindsay Slamon, because again I trust her to be completely honest with me and say what works, what doesn't, and she sort of crime scene manages my books, if you like. And my husband Gary, because he is not a fiction reader at all. And again, like you've mentioned, is very big on the continuity. And for somebody who doesn't read fiction, he can be very, very critical about what works and what doesn't. But that's what you like, and I respect that honesty, even though it might mean for an hour we sat there and not talking, and I'm sort of, I can't believe he said that. But no, it is what you need. You do need that honesty and respect.
Your Gary's a scientist, isn't he?
He is, engineer.
Yeah, so
he's got that analytical approach.
So my son is a physicist, so I think it's that. I think that's what the detail that we have, because we're too kind of arty and airy fairy.
We are, darling. We are in our tie dye and silk scarves.
Exactly. Yeah. I think we're being told to wind it up now. So
I think we are.
That's been. I hope people have enjoyed it as much as we've had a great night.
It's been a pleasure. It's been lovely to catch up as well, because obviously we've not seen each other in real life now for a few years. I think Swanwick was the last time we saw each other, wasn't it?
Yeah. Or maybe Morecambe. We did Morecambe, didn't we?
Yes, we do. Don't talk about Morecambe.
Turned up, got in a fight. We didn't get in a fight. It was a fight that happened just by us.
You made me leave a glass of wine in Morecambe just because he was a bit of fisticuffs.
Can I just say, we're really conscious that sometimes the questions don't appear in the stream on our screen. So, Kate, I hope I'm not setting you up here, but we'll go through the questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the on the thread on the page and answer any questions we've not picked up on. So
absolutely, I'll drop a link into Swanwick Writer Summer School as well, which I mentioned before, for any aspiring writers out there who might find it useful. I can thoroughly recommend it.
And I'll put links into those courses we mentioned as well. But thank you ever so much, everyone. Thank you, Kate.
Yeah, thanks very much for joining us. It's nice to see you as always, Graham.
Yeah, and
catch up soon.
Yeah, take care. Cheers, everyone.
Go and rest your wrist.
I know. Yeah, I'm a scarf or something.